to add a line to that good and evil and totally bizarro, because some of the stuff that is happening in this world, to me, is totally bizarro, Mark. Like an ATF undercover operation. Where did they get the name Fast and Furious?
From the movie, which was...
Was that from the movie?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, well, that explains why CNN got Tom Clancy as a terrorism expert right after 9/11. Yeah. From the movie, thank you for that.
It's indicative of everything that we've always talked about, which is they're way more involved with the marketing aspects than they are of actually doing the job.
Yeah, and Mark, I tell you, I want to get in. We got Bill Conroy standing by. Online.
Wait, we do?
Yes, he does. And Bill Conroy is one of the very, very few stand-up journalists in the world that will tread where the rest of mainstream media fears to go.
Hang on.
And he's an undercover.
You do stand-up?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I couldn't help.
I'll tell you what, he's between Bill and Tosh Boots on the ground Plumlee.
Yeah.
We got an undercover operation, and we really do the legitimate undercover operation going down in Mexico right now, when it threatens to be the next 8.9 earthquake for the United States. I mean,
it's true. We actually had with Bill. We had Tosh on these airwaves. What is it, Bill? 6 months ago? 8 months ago? A year ago? Talking about this very story, and Tosh was saying, "Look, here's what they're doing," and of course everybody else is going, "Nope." Well.
Yeah, but Tosh is still down there, where a guy like Tosh stands out enough with somebody with an AK-47. I told him, I said, Tosh, you've done enough in this world, but he looks around and he sees nobody else from media down there covering what he is, and that's why we're on the air, except Bill Conroy. He is the only member of media that will publish this stuff and put it out there.
That's true. Mr. Conroy, you there?
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Well, hey, this is Bill Conroy from Narco News. Bill, yeah. Audience, Bill.
Yeah. Glad to meet you.
Yeah, Bill Conroy. Bill, you've written a fantastic article that I think everybody should read, and it's on narconews.com. And let me get the article in front of me.
I got it right here. ATF's PR gun busts perpetuate drug war fairy tale.
Amazing.
And the subcontract. Listen to me. I've been listening to military stuff for too long. The subcontractor, the subtitle is Federal Agency's Good Story Spin Conceals Ugly Underbelly of the Drug War.
Yeah, but the idea of this operation, named after a movie, Fast and Furious, sending thousands of guns from the U.S. into Mexico, Bill, in your exploring this madness, this insanity, did you find any statement from any of the in-house spokespeople or anybody to describe what the hell can be the justification for sending guns into Mexico?
No, and the story I picked up here was really looking into two stories that spun off of that news breaking out of the mainstream media. CBS kind of broke that story about the Fast and Furious and a couple thousand guns being allowed to walk, as they say, into Mexico, so they could track them and follow them up to the kingpins of the drug trafficking organizations. But what I was told, and this is just obvious from prior stories and anyone that really reports down there, is once those guns get into Mexico, they're gone. I mean, the Mexican cops, law enforcement justice system, they're not going to track those, and they only turn over a very, very small percentage of those guns to the ATF for tracing, and they don't trust each other. In fact, a recent report that came out, so the Mexican AG, Attorney General's office, one of their officials described ATF's tracing system as quote unquote a joke.
Well, Bill, I was just going to ask you. You just said, well, they're not going to trace them. But isn't that what the intent of the program is? Send the weapons and trace them?
No, by walk. I happen to be along in the origination of the tactic of by walk, and that tactic began with the Bureau of Narcotics, where you would let drugs walk. Now it's been expanded to an insane degree, and the reason you would let the drugs walk was you would follow the drugs from point A to point B, and when they got to point B, you would go busting in with helicopters, crash, you name it, and arrest whoever got it.
Yeah, but you're following it, right?
That's it.
This is my point.
So
He's saying they can't follow it.
If I was reviewing this insanity, this bizarro thing that our government is paying God knows how much to do damage to the Mexican and American people, because you can't even say with that tracking program that the guns we sent into Mexico, one of them might have killed one of the ICE agents who were just killed. You can't say it wasn't so. And so who is accountable to this, Bill? I mean, mainstream media apparently doesn't have the knowledge, the expertise that you have to know what to ask.
Yeah, you know what, Bill? Talk a little bit about John Dodson, because I think he's kind of central to this. It gives the whole story a level of legitimacy here.
Kind of a guy with cojones, I think.
Yeah, well, he was the ATF guy that's the whistleblower that came forward to the media and talked about this program and how they were letting these guns go across the border in huge numbers, and he just didn't see how it made any sense. And he did an interview with a Spanish-language TV station, Univision, recently, where he just said that they don't find them again until they turn up in a crime. So, I mean, in that sense, they might actually, it might be like seeding evidence down there. You let the guns go across, and once they turn up in a crime, and maybe the Mexican officials, if they're not corrupt, actually send the gun back to get traced, and then you've got, another stat. But as an actual legitimate way of trying to get these guns off the streets or trying to get the people using them, it's nuts. I mean, it obviously won't work.
Well, but see, yeah, but what Mike just said is really important. What he just said, a stat, it's what we talked about with House of Death, is that you go, and I sorry I use this term, but everybody will understand what I mean. It's that mentality of, hey, it's just a bunch of wetbacks, so we don't really care how many people die down there. When the gun comes back, it comes back.
Stats are the same reason, and I'm in court all the time as an expert witness. Stats are the same reason why tens of thousands of Americans every year are entrapped by informants and undercover agents to violate the drug law. Entrapped, no other way of putting it. Tens of thousands for stats.
Right, but in this case, a stat means a death, which is like...
Exactly. Yeah, a stat. Well, in those cases, a stat is a virtual death because some of these people go away for 30, 40, and 50 years in prison. How much...
and none of that is really surprising to me, because we saw the same precise mentality play out in the House of Death case, where an informant was allowed to actually participate in murders in Juarez, and they were just trying to build a bigger case and get more information to bust more people, and they didn't really care if Mexicans were getting killed. I mean, that was kind of the mentality. They're only Mexicans.
Right.
Now all of a sudden it starts turning out that there's some concern that you get an ICE agent murdered down there, you get a Border Patrol agent murdered in Arizona. And then people start connecting the guns, going, meanwhile, there's, 35,000 murders in Mexico before anyone even pays attention to it.
Yeah, you got wartime stats, and, it makes me want to say WTF to the 100th power when I hear that. And the House of Death case that you've been all over, and, of course, you've been reporting through us and through narconews.com, the insanity of this, and where, I don't know where it's going to end. That's why we stay on it, because we're totally gaga about that no one has paid. You have a United States attorney who was running this operation, who, if he was a black man or Puerto Rican, somebody without the money to hire the best attorneys in the world, would be indicted for aiding and abetting in homicide. And yet, everyone is looking the other way, Congress, mainstream media, except for you, Bill. Doesn't it get under your skin? Don't you get crazed sometimes? I mean, I'm literally, I want to crawl up the wall. It has me furious. I'm used to putting these kind of crud in jail, not listening to this.
I have this little tub with cold water and ice, and Mike's feet are soaking in it so it doesn't start boiling and the top of his head pop up.
I was trained to, I took an oath to defend this country and defend the Constitution, and these people are being rewarded for a total disregard for human life, the Constitution, and everything else. And mainstream media has doesn't give a goddamn, cannot report it, and it's no wonder.
Well, but this goes to a really good point, and Bill, you're a perfect person to ask about this. You mentioned about a third of the way down in a couple of places, you talk about the PR announcements, and we've covered this subject with you and with other people about how they turn these stories. You talk about the ATF's PR announcement on the indictment in Columbus, and you also talk about after the ICE agent's murder, you talk about the FBI's Dallas field office doing the good story. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, essentially, the gist of the story is about the fact that you got to have good stories out of the drug war in order to keep the money flowing into the budgets for the drug war, and for the people, on the law enforcement side or the government side to get their promotions, and the media feeds off kind of the same thing because they're joined at the hip with their sources, and so you have this essentially what I call a fairy tale going on where anytime anything really bad happens, the goal is to keep it out of the media, and then you issue press releases to your press spokesman to tell them to start planting and sending out good news stories about things that went right. But even when you strip away and start looking at those, and that's what this story does, is look at two of those supposed good PR, good news stories, they don't add up. They don't make sense. I mean, they're actually not good news. There's essentially a lot of facts omitted that once you start stripping away, the varnish they put on it, you realize it's the same problem with this drug war, that it's not working, and that's not a message they want out there because there's too much money wrapped up in it. There just is, and the corruption is, the fear it has always been that the Mexican cartels are going to invade the United States or swamp the border. That isn't what's happening. What's happening is people on the border, law enforcement, government officials, politicians, like in Columbus, where the mayor of Columbus, the police chief of Columbus, were running guns across the border. Why? Because there's money in it. So they were essentially in league with the drug organizations, helping, to move guns to the Zetas. So that's the way it works. You get co-opted. You become part of it.
In fact,
that's the way it works.
As you point out, we gave the Mexican government, I think I helped predict this, though, the ammunition to claim that the murder of the ICE agent was conducted with a gun emanating from the United States. Strange announcement. But why don't you take off on that? I mean, the strangeness and the length of time.
Yeah, they found a gun, within 2 weeks of the murder that Mexican government produced a gun that saying that it traced back to the United States. They had ATF run a trace on the gun, and it traced back to this guy in Dallas who was the original purchaser, who then sold it into Mexico. They don't know how, smuggled it in. That was the claim. But when you looked at the front end of it, the trace just tells you who bought the gun originally. You can follow the ownership path to a certain extent, but it doesn't tell you where that gun was found. It doesn't tell you how that gun was used in Mexico. Well, all that was determined by the Mexican government. They did the autopsy on the body of the ICE agent, so they were in control of what ammunition was used or what bullets were recovered from that body. They investigated the crime scene, so they, again, could have put bullet casings there or determined which bullet casings were or weren't there. And they also ran the ballistics on this supposed gun that linked back to this guy in the U.S., so they held all the cards. They could have planted a gun in the casings, and and you know all about the chain of custody of evidence is non-existent. You can trust this stuff. And on top of it, where these agents were attacked, or two of them attacked, one died, that area is completely, law enforcement there on the local and state levels and federal, completely infiltrated with Zetas.
As always.
People have been bought off or are so afraid to do something because they'll get killed or their family will get killed.
Okay, I just want to say real quickly, you're listening to the Expert Witness Radio Show. We are speaking with Bill Conroy of Narco News. If you go to the website, expertwitnessradio.org, you can follow along with a whole bunch of links. Bill, I just want to go back to something that you said before because it kind of went by, but I think it's actually important. You said, the fear is that, all this stuff is going to come north of the border. And my question is, how much do you think that fear is actually ramped up on purpose because it shoves some money into the coffers, buys people some new vests?
That's why you are now a special agent, Mark, and not special agent.
Thank you very much. Because I learned a lot from being on this freaking show, you know what I mean? So, Bill, what do you think?
No, I think that's absolutely true, and I don't think it's a grand conspiracy. I just think, you kind of come to a stop sign and you take the path of least resistance, and that's the way the drug wars always worked. If the money comes in the door if I push button A, it doesn't come in the door if I push button B.
Well, I have a question for you to ask. If you ever get a chance to speak to someone in power